There are a ton of board games in the board game community, and most of them, especially through websites like boardgamegeek.com, they are ranked or shown how difficult they are by their weight. On Board Game Geek, it's a scale between 1 and 5, but the heavier a game is, the more strategy, mechanics, and iconography, and all the different components of the game there are. But I like to describe these heavier games as meaty, like a big, thick sandwich that you have to take a bite of, and then you get filled with lots of great gameplay. Today I want to discuss some of my favorite meaty games that I've been able to play. These games that I have displayed here are some of our meatiest games that we own, but I actually have different board games that I want to talk to you about today.
If you want to hear me talk about those games that I did have on display in the intro, I talk about most of them in my top games of 2022, which I can link down in the description below. If you watch that video, you'll also see a couple of other great contenders for meaty games, including Too Many Bones and Frosthaven that I don't talk about in this video. So I'll leave a link to that specific video down below, as well as my board game playlist. But let's get into this list. All of these meaty games usually come with the same ingredients: individual player boards, multi-strategy and gameplay elements, and lots of iconography. So let's look into how these games use these ingredients and add their own flavors to them. Great Western Trail gives each player their own rancher meeple and player board. Their goal to work on placing various structures along the trail to provide certain benefits as you land on them: collecting and selling cattle, hiring workers to help build, earn money, and improve your herd. Once you reach the city, you'll use your train to move along the track to earn you even more points as the game progresses. Your personal player board will change as the game moves along, unlocking areas to increase your benefits every turn, collecting more workers, as well as you continue to watch what the other ranchers are doing along the trail. It's a fun flavor of worker placement, deck building, and overall a more intense strategy game that will definitely make you feel full from a meatier game. Going from a more rustic meal to a more sophisticated palate, we have Lacosa, a game following the life of Mozart as he develops and performs music throughout Europe. Players will once again receive their own personal music folder, or player mat, using it to track their actions each turn, as well as their resources and music notes that will be used during the game. Just like Great Western Trail, the board looks overwhelming with lots of iconography, actual sheet music, and a card pool. As a sponsor of the great composer, you are working to hire other composers to complete his work, placing your music notes onto each act of the music in order that your composer wins out. You will be moving around Europe to collect and ensure that you are the most prominent sponsor of Mozart versus all the other composers you'll be competing against, as well as collecting or performing Mozart's great works to further his name. With limited actions, resources, and a 5-act game that has different end-round bonuses, there's a lot to keep track of, and you will be filled with delicious European-inspired gameplay by the end of this game. Moving southeast from Europe, we look at our final extremely meaty game, Wayfarers of the South Tigris. As explorers, cartographers, and astronomers, players set off from Baghdad to map the surrounding land, water, and sky. Each player receives a similar-looking player board that has a unique twist on the top portion of the board, a specific part of your gameplay that you'll be improving and changing upon as the game moves forward. There's an entire front and back page of iconography and explanation of moves for this game, seemingly too much to handle. Players will have 4 different decks to collect from: land, water, workers, and sky, each one being able to stack icons and pairings of icons in order to accumulate points and workers. There's also a central journal track that your players will move forward on, having to meet the requirements to move on to the next space, but will also receive a reward for reaching it, kind of like the research track in Arnak. The cards that you can take also have a secondary action that you can take instead of collecting that card if you have the right worker placed on that card. There are individual endgame bonuses you can reach if you collect that specific card, as well as community endgame bonuses where you're racing to reach that requirement first. There are different types of resources and payments you can use to acquire certain pieces to improve your board, purchase a card, or play a certain action. It is by far one of the most meatiest games I've played, but it was also really fun in my opinion. The way you set up your board throughout the game really helps or hinders how you can move along the journal track, as well as the worker you collect and what icons or end goals you reach toward. This is a very rich game that leaves me full of thoughts of how I can improve or strategize the next time I play.
Thanks so much for indulging me and letting me share this very hearty meal with you and telling you about my favorite meaty games. Do you agree with this terminology? Do you think it's very silly? It is kind of silly. Do you agree with that term? Do you think that all of the games that I chose belong under the meaty category? Anyway, let me know what your favorite heavy or meaty games are down below. I'd love to know as always, and also how long these games take to play. Like Too Many Bones, the first time we played it, it took like 3 hours to get through, but I know that some other games take longer or shorter depending once you get to know the game. But anyway, thanks again so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.